Tafuri. David, do you agree with President Trump that we should have done this in 2013?
I absolutely do. I wrote an article in 2012 arguing that we should have done missile strikes then. At that time, there had only been 8,000 Syrians killed by Assad. That was tragic then. We have 60 times that who have been killed now, almost 500,000 Syrians dead. Had we done the airstrikes or military strikes in 2013, sent a message to Assad that we weren't going to let him engage in the most heinous acts towards his own civilians, including the barrel bombs and the chemical weapons attacks, we might have averted some of those deaths, and we might have put him more in a box. So I certainly agree we should have done it back then, although I would note that President Trump didn't agree that we should have done it back then. He tweeted several times that we should not attack Syria in 2013. He was wrong then. He's right now.
Right. David, you know, the thing is what the president did, and I found maddening, is instead of saying, I don't want to do that to get wrapped up in a conflict like Iraq, he would say, I don't want to put 100,000 troops in there, and, you know, that as if that was the only choice. As you point out, there were other choices besides putting 100,000 troops or doing nothing, right?
Absolutely, there were other choices. You see that these tactical missile strikes and airstrikes can have a real impact on dictators. It worked in Kosovo. We got Serbia to back off on a genocide. Even when we finally did some bombing and moved some troops into Bosnia, we got some of the genocidal actions to back off there. And I think it's going to have an impact in Syria, not so much because of the strikes that we did already, but because Assad is worried about what we'll do next. If we want to, we can take out his entire air force. He is not going to let that happen. He's very worried about that.
You know, in this case in particular, you had his Secretary of Defense Gates, Secretary of Defense Hagel, Secretary of State Kerry, all lobbying, and I think maybe even Hillary Clinton, you got to take action. And he said, well, I don't know about these rebels. Well, early on, there were rebels there that we could get behind. But the longer we waited, the more they were infiltrated by terrorists, which makes it an extremely dicey situation right now.
I fully agree with you. I mean, the rise of ISIS was in Syria, and it happened in part as a response to the fact that nobody was supporting the moderate rebels in Syria. The Syrian civilian population had no one else to turn to try and protect them from Assad. They were willing to accept ISIS in that case because the situation was so extreme, because they were not getting any support. That really is tragic. The rise of sort of Islamic radicalism in Syria came out of the fact that the international community was not acting in Syria.
And finally, would you say Assad has to go? We know he's evil, 400,000 dead, maybe even more. More will die. But if he goes, who's next? And do we have to play a role in that?
Absolutely, Assad must go. That was actually the policy of the Obama administration. That should be the policy of the Trump administration. I hope that Trump has, signed on to that policy now, given the fact that he's done missile strikes against Assad. That is a precondition to getting a political solution, because I don't think the Sunni population will ever live with Assad. They'll just fight to the death if he continues to stay in power. For what's next, Assad has to step down, and there has to be some sort of coalition government. Certainly, some of the people around Assad could still be in the leadership, someone from the Alawite community that supports Assad, and then you need representatives of the other ethnic and sectarian groups in Syria. I do agree that the U.S. has to play a role. Unfortunately, in very difficult situations like this, people look to the U.S. to lead, and the fact that we haven't led in obtaining a political solution, as hard as it has been, is the reason we don't have one yet.
Exactly. We left the door open, and guess who walked in? The Russians. They're now a major player, and not only that, also throughout the Middle East. David Tafuri, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up straight